talking with Rachel with Women in Priesthood. Check the description box and make sure to subscribe to her channel. She's also on my featured channels list. And there's big news today. I'm looking at the Times of Israel, and they're saying anonymous official tells top Israeli news channel Sinwar has been killed. So that's like the most like confirmatory piece of news that I've seen. Everywhere else is saying that he is likely killed, but the Times of Israel is citing Channel 12 News out of Israel for that. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to give it some time and allow people to join. I tried to get this set up earlier, but I was going to try and do this in OBS so I could do it from the desktop and we could have like a better view, but we're going to have to rely on our phones in this like up and down view until I figure out how to do that better. So just really quick, it's been a long time since I've talked about Artsa. We're going to do a quick promotion here. Okay, so Artsa. Okay, this is something that you can purchase. The link is in the description box of each video. I actually have, so if like you go to my videos and then you go down to the description box, right here, you'll see order your Artsa box from Israel, 25% off with code Jared25. And what it is you have these different products from small businesses in Israel, and they send this to you quarterly. It's a box, and it comes with all sorts of stuff. So, for example, here we have red lentil mix. So we haven't opened that yet, but we will. It looks good. And by the way, all the food that they've ever sent is really good. Especially with this one, they sent these cashews. Hyssop, is that hyssop or hyssop? Do you know how that's pronounced, Rachel? Hyssop roasted cashew.
I like the way you're saying it.
Okay. Well, anyway, it looks a little interesting because it's green, but it's really, really good. So they sent that as well. There's something in here in particular that I really like. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's this. It's a little Ark of the Covenant thing for kids that you put together. And then they can put that, I guess, whatever, on their dresser. But my kids really love Artsa. Every time it's a surprise, there's stuff for kids. There's also home decor and food and all sorts of stuff. But my girls, and my boy is starting to get into it too. They really, really look forward to this every 3 months. So again, go to the description box of the video. You can get 25% off with my code. Sorry, let me just see what else there was. Oh yeah, with this one, they have like these envelopes. It has like a description of each product. What's this one? Oh yeah, Qumran Inkwell. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. And then it has like a little thing so you can try and do, it looks like Paleo Hebrew right there. So anyway, cool stuff. Artsa. It supports small businesses in Israel, and it's really fun for the whole family. And I'm not just saying that. I know that sounds cliche, but we all look forward to it. And the next one that should come out is going to be the Christmas one, which usually comes with, the last couple times it's been these little olive wood ornaments that are like the Star of David or a nativity scene. So these two things, Christmas and Artsa, they go very well together. Okay, so Rachel, what did you think about this when you found this out today? Did you first find out about it when I called you, or
yeah?
Okay,
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Okay, so just so you guys know, there was an Israeli strike today, and they are reporting that honestly, I'm gonna take my camera and just see if, can you guys see my computer?
Yep.
Structure. Okay. I will send a link. This is on Council of Foreign Relations. This is the structure of Hamas. There's 2 head guys.
Oh wait, really quick.
Yep.
I don't know if it shows you on your screen, but there should be like a little like 2 arrows. If you click on that, I think it'll switch your view around so you can see it easier.
Oh, there we go. I don't dare show you my my filming studio. You guys are getting the real view.
behind the scenes. All right. Oh, I don't. Is your microphone off?
Yep, got
You
it.
may
Okay.
have. Okay.
This is a basic structure of how Hamas is designed. Okay, so these two gentlemen, we've got former leader Ismail Haniyeh. He was killed in July. This is Yahya Sinha. He's basically the living number two, and he's their remaining main leader. If you go down here, you have delegations abroad, you have their Shura Council. You go down here, there was a gentleman who's in charge of the West Bank. He's been killed. And then you have Yahya Sinwar again down here. He's in charge of Gazan affairs. And this killing sounds like he was killed while he was in Gaza. So when you look at the remaining power structures of who's left, you've got the Hamas government, you have the prime minister of Hamas, Prime Minister Asim al-Dalia. I would assume that he's probably a high priority hit on the next. And then this is probably a more, I mean, you might not even hear about this, but delegations abroad right here. That's going to be Hamas leaders who are, a lot of them are living in Qatar and Bahrain. And I wouldn't be surprised if those are attacks that are kind of carried out in a less a less public way. But I think that when October 7th hit, okay, so this is something I think everyone needs to be prepared for. Right now, with the US election happening and we have a lame duck president, there's going to be an enormous opportunity for not just any entity like Israel, but like also movement in the Southeast China Sea. This is an opportunity for kind of global players to make moves because we're in this
Yeah.
kind of limbo space between now and January. So I would expect more of this for the next 4 months. I would.
And we'll get back to this story, but you and I have been talking about Taiwan. Do you know if those military drills are still going on? Because I know China had just initiated like some pretty large scale
Yeah.
military drills around the island. Any
There are
news
enough
on
that
that? Do you know?
there are enough that military personnel in my neck of the woods are paying attention. They're like,
Okay.
that's not nothing.
Excuse me. Yeah. Okay. So let me look at this really quick, and then I have a question for you. Let me switch the camera around here. Sorry that we have to do it like this, but they have a picture of IDF troops. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but they have a picture of IDF troops like standing around this guy who they think could be Sinwar. So this just recently happened. They have the body, and from what I've seen, they're doing DNA testing. But the thing, the most, like I said, the most confirmatory thing that I've seen is from Israel, or from the Times of Israel, saying that Channel 12 News cites a senior Israeli official who says that they have confirmed that he's dead, that he's been eliminated. So that's the best that I know right now. I have some of these other like live blogs up, like the Jerusalem Post. They're the only ones that are saying it. Jerusalem Post. Let me just check New York Times really quick. 14 minutes ago on New York Times, Israeli officials will be examining fingerprints and dental records to determine if the militant killed in Gaza is Yahya Sinwar. Is that how you pronounce it? It sounded like you pronounced it a little bit differently.
Oh, let me show it's. Oh, yeah. I don't.
I
It's
don't know
all
if that.
transliterated from Arabic, so let me find the Arabic spelling.
Okay. That determination could come before DNA testing is complete, the official said. Israel has the Hamas leader's medical records from his decades in Israeli detention. Okay, so they have that to compare it to. Yeah, so it doesn't sound like it's official yet, but it's very likely. I had a question for you. So after after Ismail Haniyeh was killed back in July,
Mm.
did Sinwar become the number two of the entire organization? Because I know if I remember right, I think he was number one in Gaza, uh, and he was actually in Gaza while Ismail Haniyeh was outside the country. Um, but did he become the de facto number two, or is it
Yes.
that other guy, the prime minister of Hamas that you were referring to?
He became the leader in August, appointed in August, 24. So he became the new leader. So he's been in place for 3 months.
Okay. And
So
so now it's going to be that prime minister that you showed. I'm not familiar with him. I've never seen his
well,
name before.
what's interesting is they did say that like the Politburo has 15 members and Hanea and Sinwar were the two heads. So maybe they'll just promote a new leader from within that 15 member Politburo. But you also have the West, oh wait, sorry. Yeah, you have the Palestinian diasporic affairs leader Khalid Mashail. He's also on the list. And then the Hamas government prime minister Asim al Daalis. So there's a couple more, but I don't know what the 15 member Politburo. Now, one of the things I think is really interesting is that, I mean, for him to stay in Gaza as a Hamas leader is actually pretty rare because a lot of them have taken off and just found refuge in Bahrain in their wealthy apartments or whatever. But he was in Gaza, so that's an easy strike to make because for the Israelis, because they don't have to worry about, infringing on someone else's diplomatic territory, I guess. So yeah, that was a long answer to your question. He's been in charge since Hanea was killed in July.
Yeah. So this is a really big deal. He filled that role essentially, and now it seems like he's probably dead. So this is another long line of escalations. Escalating to what? I don't know. Uh, has anything changed for you since last time that we talked? Like where you think this is going?
I think well, one thing I forgot to mention last time that I wish I had is that I don't think we appreciate how much especially the world over by the Mediterranean is watching what's happened in Ukraine. And I think what they've seen, and I think Israel has taken notes, is that we asked Ukraine to disarm under Clinton, and they did, and now they've been invaded. And I think that Israel and a lot like kind of looks at that as a cautionary tale of like, the United States can ask you to do something, but when push comes to shove, are they really going to be there for you? And I think the conclusion that they've kind of come to is no, we have to do this on our own. And we've been waiting for a year to come to a diplomatic solution. We still have 100 hostages that we haven't reclaimed. Some of them might be dead, some of them might be alive, but we're going to do this on our own terms. We're not going to listen to we're not going to listen to, it's been a year, a full year. They just celebrated the 1 year anniversary of the attack, and they have that many hostages remaining and no diplomatic solution. So I do think that this limbo period, the year anniversary, I think Israel's just, they're going to do what they're going to do, and they're not going to look for a diplomatic solution. I know that Al Jazeera reports that Palestinians are always looking for a diplomatic solution. I don't think that's accurate because if they did, they would have released hostages by now, and they have quite a few left. I think I saw a report that on Al Jazeera that the remaining hostages are probably going to be, you know, suffering as a result of this attack. They're going to be treated poorly as a result of this attack.
Yeah.
So
So I don't know if you saw my recent video where I came up with this analogy as we were coming home from Utah. I went to the Scripture Central conference, and we were just like 25 minutes from home, and we hit a raccoon. And this raccoon, and this ties in. Don't worry, guys. It's an analogy. This raccoon was initially in our lane. I saw it, but then it started going to the left, and I thought I was in the clear. I thought it was just going to run off the road, but then it cut back, and then we hit it, and then it like somehow cracked the radiator, and all this coolant came out, and the car overheated. Okay, and I was thinking about that recent experience and comparing that to the conflict uh, that Israel is in right now. How it seems like things are going really well for Israel. Like you had the initial what started the war with the Hamas attack, but ever since that time, Israel has just like dominated, just boom, 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 like victory after victory after victory, getting to a point that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Them taking out the leadership of Hamas and Hezbollah. Um, if you would have told me that a year ago, I'd be like, oh my gosh, things must really be taking off. If that's the case, like we must be in biblical territory because it feels like that's always been the status quo for such a long time, having these people in power and these groups. And I just never thought I would see the day where both both of their leadership would be taken out the way that we've seen over the last few months. So Israel just keeps, it seems, they keep dominating. But could there be a moment, like a split second, where things suddenly reverse? Because you and I have talked about the fact that Israel has a very strong military. I think you said the strongest in the region. But could something happen where Iran, Syria, whoever else, Yemen, whoever else wants to join, they could all like really unite and come against Israel to stop them? Do you think that things could change on a dime, or what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? I know it's like hard to no one can predict it, but what do you think?
I mean, what's hard is like I'm gonna look at things. This is why you and I. Well, this is why Jared and I are friends. Is because like he'll talk about things from a really educated biblical perspective and like a last days, and I'll talk about things from kind of like a more objective like political regional perspective. And I know there's a really strong narrative about out there about Iran that I don't buy. I don't think it's realistic simply because the nuclear weapon thing or that kind of attack is like guaranteed mutually assured destruction by anyone. Um and I just don't think that I just don't see that happening. I don't think that kind of an attack by Iran is realistic. I think one of the things that's important to understand about Iran as well is they talk a big game. That's kind of part of their political culture. I think you could argue that they tend to talk loud but then work subversively. So like Hezbollah, working as a proxy, or their Iranian proxies out in Yemen or in Bahrain. Um, I think the Abraham Accords showed that most of the Arab Middle East is more afraid of Iran than they are of Israel. So I don't I don't see that happening right now. I think what's a more interesting shift is to see the reduced support for Israel by the United States. If you're looking for me, that's something that seems more biblical. I would say that's more biblical. Is that they are a little more and more out on their own with probably less support by the American public and the American military than they've had in a very, 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 very long time. And I think,
Well, really
yeah, go
quick
ahead.
along those lines. So I remember recently Donald Trump saying that if he doesn't become president, then Israel's not going to exist soon. I don't know if that's hyperbole, or I don't know if that's like reality. If that's the case, what is he talking? Why would Israel not exist? What would happen?
Well, I mean, you have to understand that, like, the actual narrative that is out there for a very long time for a lot of these poorer countries is to eradicate Israel. Like, they say that. A lot of these Arab countries, whether or not they have the means and the military might to actually do that, I think Israel's demonstrated multiple times that they have just a much stronger military and a much stronger international coalition backing them than Jordan's not going to do anything. I think, what one player that I am nervous about, I will say, is I'm always nervous about Pakistan because Pakistan is an Islamic republic. It's very poor, but they have nuclear weapons. They got a hold of nuclear weapons after Kennedy, and they are not very well run and they're not very controlled. And so I always worry about Pakistan getting some kind of like they have nukes, they have them, but I always worry about them doing something crazy because these aren't democratically elected, governments. They're not like owned by the people. They don't respond to the people's desires and needs. And so I always worry about them. Um
Have they ever? I've never really seen Pakistan talk too much about Israel. I don't really follow
I
Pakistan
mean,
that
they're an
much.
Islamic republic, so I'm sorry, yeah, they're an Islamic republic. They're religious. Their constitution is religious. So
Yeah.
it kind of goes with the territory. I
Okay. So
just don't I
if
actually
they
Mark
go
and I
crazy, then yeah.
my
Yeah. Go
husband's
ahead.
in Middle Eastern studies like major. That's how we met. And I talked to him. I'm like, do you think there's a likelihood? And he thinks about things kind of from a military strategic perspective. I'm like, do you think there's a likelihood that Israel is going to get like attacked by Iran? He's just like, I just don't. Neither of us really see that happening. Like this, you just don't. I mean, even okay. So this is another thing to kind of put in context. Like the October 7th attack was emotionally dramatic and terrifying, but it wasn't dramatic in the sense that and it was dramatic in the sense that it happened, but it wasn't dramatic in terms of actual numbers and actual damage. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It
if
does.
you're looking, it's a horrible thing in terms of military. Like if a country was trying to demonstrate their military prowess, they didn't really demonstrate that. They just showed that they can launch a surprise attack. That's it on civilians.
It feels like to me. and I don't know if this is the case, they must have known that this would be the outcome of the attack because they made it really brutal. You talked about the fact that they may have like put them on, I can't remember the name of that drug. You texted it to me, but
I forgot it
maybe
already.
the reason why it was so brutal is because of the drug that they put them on. But I feel like if you're gonna make a decision to do something like that, to do an incursion into Israeli territory and kidnap people, that takes planning, and they must have had some objective behind that. And I know like maybe some of it is like, oh, we'll go capture Israelis and then we'll exchange them for prisoners. Maybe that was the only thing. But at the same time, they were calling for Al-Aqsa flood. They were like, brothers, this is the time. This is the time to take out Israel. I don't know if that was hyperbole, but like they were trying to rally around the Temple Mount, and they were calling on the surrounding Arab nations to join in, and everybody, just everybody and anybody to join in. And I wonder if Hamas really was hoping to get that started to destroy Israel. So I don't know. But let me ask you this question. Okay, so Iran. Last time we talked about the fact that they want power, they want to how do you pronounce it? Hegemony, right? In the region. Why do they find it worth their time to fund these terrorist groups rather than just like focus on themselves? Like forget Israel, just focus on building power in other ways? Why don't they do that? Why do they care about Israel? And do you think they're serious about destroying Israel, or why do they keep talking about it if they don't have the ability to do it?
Well, I think that there's a strategic like narrative aspect, which is that I told you before that there's this crisis of governance happening all over the Middle East. It's called a governance paradox where Egypt, Pakistan, Iran, um, Syria, North Africa, there's so much poverty, and you can't basically all of the governments in those countries have failed to provide basic services and governance to their people. And so if you are perpetually failing as a government, it's much easier to look at Israel or blame someone else as an external threat and problem, because then you can distract your people and you can focus your people's angst towards an external enemy. And
So
that is
you think that that's why they're doing it, because it's a lot of money. They spent a lot of money with Hezbollah and Hamas
joint
and like
Iran.
yeah, Iran, yeah.
Well, I mean, this is something where it's hard for us as Americans to like wrap our brain around this paradigm because I know people would disagree with us, but we aren't actually hegemonic. We do things like deploy to Europe and then leave in theory. You know what I mean? Like we don't cede territory and make it our own. But other countries do operate with that kind of historical paradigm because Iran is a very ancient culture and they used to cover most of Mesopotamia, used to be their land. And so kind of ceding new land shows that they are, redominating the region. And they basically kind of de facto already run Eastern Iraq, like they already kind of run it anyway, and that's kind of what they're doing in most of the region anyway, is kind of having de facto influence in a lot of these places. I think one of the reasons that they made this move is because the Abraham Accords under Trump were a really interesting accord in that they got Saudi, Israel, and a couple other Arab countries on the same page, agreeing to basically towards stability, economic recovery together. They were finally becoming friends, and that's when Iran realized they needed to make a move and make themselves relevant. They were basically Israel and Saudi, and a lot of other countries were saying, "We are worried about Iran. We're worried about their behavior. Let's unify around this." Iran had to make a move to kind of unite the Islamic world again. Um, and that's why I think they made this move to
Okay.
kind of support
So
Hezbollah. And I know there's people that disagree with the idea that Iran was behind Hezbollah, but I think that's my take, guys. I think 100% Iran is behind Hezbollah and participating in the attack.
okay, so Iran is basically trying to gain more power in the region. They have their own. They're trying to like establish and maintain their own block of power,
Oh,
and
just
then
catch people up in the chat as to what we're talking about. There's a few people that just joined.
oh, okay, we're just talking about the fact that excuse me, that it seems like Yahya Sinwar has been killed. He's the one that became the leader of Hamas after Hania was killed in July in Tehran. And here's like a picture. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but it's IDF troops standing around what is most likely the body of Sinwar. Um, there's an anonymous official that told Channel 12 that Sinwar has been killed, but everywhere else is saying that they're still working on confirming that, comparing his medical records from when he was an idea or an Israeli prisoner to this body that they found. So they're still working on confirming that, but most likely he is dead. So this would be another major milestone, and we've seen a lot of this recently. At first, it was Hania, and then it was Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, and now back to Hamas. Now it's Sinwar. So Israel is just taking these guys out, and it's pretty astounding. So we know that there's going to be a war in Israel. It's going to make its way to Jerusalem itself. And at that point, Christ is going to come to the Mount of Olives as Jerusalem is under siege, and he's going to physically save the Jews. So, what is your opinion about that? Do you think that this could be the war, or if it's not Iran that like invades with conventional forces, how do you think that we get to that point? Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I was super naive because um my husband and I were planning on doing a military family tour in Jordan last year. Last year we were making, like, we would be there right now. We were making moves to kind of go be there because we both studied Middle Eastern studies and Arabic. We love Jordan. It's a very Jordan's actually a very friendly country to Israel because most of Western the Western Jordan is where they allow Palestinian refugees to live. So, like, a very large proportion of the Jordanian population at this point is Palestinian. So I for 20 years, when I went to Morocco in 2006 when the Fatah conflict hit between Hezbollah, and that was the last major conflict that was happening in the region. And then it was 2006. It's been almost just shy of 20 years of relative stability between Israel, Lebanon, Palestine, Gaza. Like, it's been 20 years of relative stability to the point where I, as a Middle Eastern studies expert, what have you, was like, okay, things are good. We were looking more at we were looking more at Pakistan and all the conflict in Egypt, and then this happened again. And I think a lot of us who study this, who are Christian, thought, like, I think we're already in it. I think we're already in it. I think if you're looking at last days labor pains, like, active labor has started. That's the way that I would put
But
it.
do you think that this is like, do you think October 7th started the final war? Like, do you think that this is Gog and Magog and it's going to lead up to Jerusalem? And how does that happen? Because how does it happen? Because you're talking about, Iran probably you talk okay, you talked about attacking with nuclear weapons, and you're like, no, because that'd be mutually assured destruction. But could it be? I used this example before. In World War II, Germany it had a superior force and technology and all this stuff. But I've heard this analogy used before, where if you have like this like champion boxer that is just like just so skilled, won all these different championships, and it's like he's like the best boxer in the world. If you put a few hundred other people in the ring with him, it doesn't matter how good he is. He's just going to be overwhelmed by the sheer number of other boxers. So could there be something like that where something really drastic happens and they, whether it's Iran or anybody else, decide to invade Israel and overwhelm them with conventional forces, just putting nuclear weapons aside?
I mean, just looking, if you're asking me from a Middle Eastern studies perspective right now, looking at the ground, I would say no. I
Okay.
think we're much more likely, like, people want to put up, when you look at war and conflict, you want to put up these, like, very formal, definitive lines. Like, this is when the war started, and this is when it ended, and these were the fighters, and this was the, does that make sense? Like, that's how we think of warfare in a very, like, stable society. But the reality is what I would predict is much more likely going to happen is that this, I'm seeing people put in the chat like a lot of questions about why aren't certain resolutions being followed, and why aren't these things being followed, and why aren't we, because we have entered a steady state of chaos. Warfare is chaos. It is. That's what warfare is. That's what conflict and warfare are. Civilians get killed, soldiers get killed. Like, we attempt to rein in the concept of war with something like the Geneva Convention. But countries in the Middle East don't abide by the Geneva Convention. They haven't, that's not a thing for them. So, what you will have, I think, is what we have right now is a steady state of chaos that I think will continue to happen, especially between Palestine and Israel. I think that there is a pretty big concern. I mean, I'm terrified of Iran getting functional nukes. And I know someone said, why do we care about other countries having a nuke? Like, you need to watch Oppenheimer. Like, anyone having a nuclear weapon is a huge issue for everyone because it starts a nuclear threshold, a nuclear war where everyone's obligated. It's basically mutually assured destruction. So, what you worry about is a rogue entity, a rogue group that doesn't necessarily isn't the government getting a hold of those nukes and having an agenda, right? So, actually, this Hamas attack is a perfect attack. Like, this attack on Israel didn't necessarily by Hamas, by a cell within Hamas, probably with Iranian backing, didn't necessarily have the stamp of approval by like the government of Hamas and the people of Hamas. Like a lot of Palestinian people were caught totally off surprise, caught off guard by this attack. So it was a tiny little group of people who made the decision to organize this attack, to facilitate it, and to launch it. And I do worry about that with Iran, that they breach a kind of nuclear weapons threshold and then the wrong people get a hold of it. Right now, though, objectively speaking, I don't think that's likely because there's a mutual assured destruction. Like, if you want to be destroyed, launch a nuclear weapon at Israel.
Yeah.
Because it's not
Well,
like they would have to, yeah. Like,
so what's the most likely scenario? Because again, the final war is characterized by an invasion. So how do you think that would happen? I know that you're saying like it's not likely, you don't see it with Iran but like it's going to happen at some point by somebody. So this is all just pure speculation. Who do you think it would be, and what would have to happen to make that happen? Like for example, what one thing? Okay,
we
I don't
haven't
know if
talked
they were
about
like being
Saudi.
serious about
We
doing
haven't
this, but
actually talked about Saudi at all.
what like do you think that they could do that?
No, I mean, I wish I could point to one person. I don't think, or one country, but I don't think it's likely to do that. The way that this is totally speculative. Like, um, I think it's more likely that support for Israel by the United States continues to progress towards a downward trajectory. I do. I think that the funding for Israel, popular support for Israel, like you've already seen it in our election, it's actually it's a serious enough issue for people that there are candidates who are backing off support for Israel because they're worried it's going to hurt their popularity. And right now, the United States is the most serious backer of Israel in terms of arms, in terms of deals, in terms of, I don't know, diplomatic support. And if we decide to do this more, a lot of I live in North Carolina, and the anger that people feel in North Carolina because money that was supposed to be allocated towards FEMA is not available. And where everyone is saying, like, well, did it go to Ukraine? Right. So there's this kind of I think there's this sentiment in the United States, like, let's fix our economy. Like, we can't send money abroad. We need to fix our own economy. We need to fix our own internal stability. Um, can I make a small prediction? Like, I actually am very concerned about ISIS affiliates or those kinds of terrorist affiliates who have come in through the southern border who are already in the United States. And that's actually a report that's been put out by several US security agencies. Like, I think that actually is something that could happen again in the United States. Um, gosh. So, um, I forgot what I was saying. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, what about this? Do you think maybe
Oh, sorry.
the
So what I
invasion?
see is going
Oh,
to
go ahead. Go
happen
ahead.
is steady state right now, right? Israel's trying to like handle this Palestinian situation with no clear end state. There's really no clear end state. There isn't. The US has kind of lost its ability to have diplomatic leverage because it's been a year. There hasn't been I think the year anniversary hit, no hostages back. And Israel just said, we're going to do what we're going to do. And I think that's the way they're going to press forward for quite a while. I think US
Yeah.
support for Israel financially and diplomatically is going to continue to decrease. And Israel more and more is going to find themselves fighting their own battles with less international support.
Okay. So what about this? If it's not like a big uh, invading army from Iran or whoever, Turkey or whoever you want to choose, if it's not that, what if Israel just becomes more and more weakened? They run out of resources, or they like their enemies become more and more radicalized, and those that are within the country, the Palestinians, like in the West Bank, for example, what if they just like what if there's another intifada, but this time it's because like I think the second intifada was at the turn of the millennium, like in the year 2000, I think is when it happened. What if it's that? What if it's Israel's fighting these groups like Hezbollah and whatever outside of Israel, but then there's like a third intifada, and there's a lot of like chaos in Jerusalem, but it's from the local population, and they lose their minds and they're killing Israelis. Like, do you think
That's
that could be it?
interesting. Okay, so if any of you, well, if you want to check out on my channel, Women in Priesthood, I did a population analysis about like it's like 2 3 videos ago, and at the very end I actually did a population analysis of the Israeli state, because they have a very high population growth, but it's not accurately reflected across the average. They have a small contingent of the country that are actually having a lot of children, and then a large proportion of the Israeli population are actually quite secular. So it's not a completely, I actually really think that's an interesting point, just um from a like that biblical kind of theme of like internal conflict makes you weak to external invasion or things like that, is that there isn't this total, there's a lot of secularism in the state of Israel, and those religious groups of people have so much political power, the ones that are having tons of kids, that they don't actually have to fight in the Israeli army. So it is an interesting, I think that's a cool, not cool, but like an interesting theory that like their resource that they could run out of is human resource internally. Like they could run out of people who can fight and skilled fighters. That's actually, and if you don't have support from international, it's an interesting theory. And we,
Thank you.
we're weaving in between like a strategic perspective versus like a biblical perspective. So Jared and I are trying to find that meeting place between like biblical prophecy and maybe strategic reality on the ground right now. But
Yeah.
I mean, I never would have predicted the invasion of October 7th happening. That was not something I saw coming.
That's the thing. It's like there's these things that come out of nowhere that nobody see. Well, maybe some people like who are in the know, but like basically nobody sees coming. And I just wonder, could there be another thing like that in this war? There's an alert here on X from the Times of Israel. Live update: police reportedly identify Sinwar through images of his teeth. So that's like the latest update. It's looking more and more like like he really was killed.
Can I read a comment? Tony or
Yeah.
Troy made a point, and he said, "People are tired of fighting these wars on behalf of people who don't give a crap about us." I mean, I think that that is a reflection of a sentiment of the American population. I do. I think, and so if there's anything that shows, that's why I do predict that there will be a decreasing support, popular political and popular support for sending any kind of money abroad. Um, and in the future in terms of US foreign policy, because
Well,
I think everyone's really motivated to fix things at home right now, and so
mhm.
concerns about what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening, I just think those are just going to be second tier for a lot of Americans and a lot of politicians.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I
I'm
guess we'll
going to
just
think
have to
about your
see.
question more. I'm obviously going to think about it more. So, but I will say,
Well,
like, one of the things that I thought was kind of prophetic, I told you, like Jeremiah 5, is to see how, an invasion from the north on Israel and kind of see them stand alone a little bit, um, is happening.
yeah. Okay. So two thoughts. Okay. When this whole thing started, and immediately after October 7th, like I said, there was like a big call out for everybody to mobilize and take down Israel. That's what Hamas was doing. And they were calling it Operation Al Aqsa Flood. And I was thinking, oh, are they going to inspire people in groups and terrorist groups in the West Bank to join them? And you're going to see a lot of stuff in the West Bank. And you haven't seen a whole lot. There's been raids by the, well, I don't know if it's the IDF or the police or both, but there have been raids in the West Bank. There have been clashes and stuff, but nothing on the level of what we've seen with Gaza and Hezbollah, right? But there were some clashes and some of them pretty close to Israel. But I was thinking, man, maybe if they get uh, radicalized enough, or if they decide to join in, maybe that could like maybe Israel will just be surrounded by all these hostiles that are actively fighting. So I don't know if things that could like flare up in the West Bank. I have no idea. But then the other thing was uh, before all this like started with Hezbollah, before the killing of Nasrallah and these this big operation that's going on right now, I had seen some stories saying that Israel was aware of plots that Hezbollah had to do October 7th style attacks and like go into Israel, maybe invade the Golan Heights and try and take it. So by way of invasion, it seems like they wanted to do that. I don't know if they would still be able to do anything like that because Israel is currently in Lebanon on the ground. But anyway, I could see it being that this whole thing with Hezbollah is Armageddon. Maybe it'll escalate even further. Maybe the tables will turn and Hezbollah will make incursions into Israel. But then later on, maybe the West Bank will erupt and organize, and I don't know, because there are other terrorist groups there. Like we've been talking about Hezbollah and Hamas, but there's also Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And I think this is a separate organization, but I know that there's something called Lion's Den,
Hmm.
and there's probably some other ones as well. So I just wonder if they would ever
Yeah, I
come
mean,
together.
twenty
Yeah, go ahead.
percent of 20% of the population of Israel are Palestinian. So it's pretty
Yeah,
big. It's pretty big.
yeah.
And I think to your point before, I would encourage everyone listening, if you haven't watched the documentary on, you can just look it on YouTube on the 6 Day War. That's a really good example of, now you have to understand the 6 Day War was in 67. At this time, you basically had a coordinated multinational effort by Egypt, Jordan, um, like Syria, like a lot, basically a bunch of Arab countries combined to launch an attack from several fronts, from the southwest by Sinai Peninsula, sorry, yep, southwest by Sinai Peninsula, and the upper like Golan Heights area. And they were almost successful. They were almost successful, but it's that, so that was interesting, but none of those modern Arab militaries are as strong as they once were. Like they were very, Israel, Egypt was incredibly strong as a country in the 60s and 70s. Um, Jordan has a good relationship with Israel as much as possible. They're trying to stay diplomatic. Um, Saudi's the money purse, so that's interesting. And then you also have to remember that, I mean, if you wanted to take a big view out, and you look at the modern Middle East, it is kind of a checkers board, and that China and Russia do have vested interests in some of those countries. Access to gas and oil is always going to be a huge reason to be involved in those countries and in those governments. And so that's, I don't know, that's an interesting perspective to have, is if you take a bigger view out from a global perspective, like, are there any ways that China and Russia might be interested in funding insurgencies or things like that, claiming territory? I don't know about.
I could totally see them doing that. I mean, this is from my non-expert point of view, but if you're trying to take the focus off of Ukraine or Taiwan, maybe it's like, hey, let's get this going in Israel, and the U.S. will have to focus more on Israel, and it'll be less pressure on us as we try and take Taiwan. Do you think? Do you think that's sound reasoning, or what do you think about that? I
I
don't
mean,
know. Okay.
honestly, I'm like literally holding. I'm like, I don't know if any of you watching. I worked in Baghdad for 3 years at the U.S. Embassy there, and I have a background in Middle Eastern studies and Arabic, and so I've worked in the region a lot. But I'm basing my predictions on past historical precedent, and right now, it just kind of feels like all bets are off a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
especially the next 4 months. Like, to see big players make big moves, Russia, China, like, Israel, like, this is a big move by Israel to be taking out all of Hamas
Yeah,
despite international criticism. This is a big move for them to
yeah, I
keep
know.
doing
This
this and
this
just
entire
not even,
year has
yeah, yeah.
this entire year has been off the rails, uh, in every way. Both like, uh, disasters that we've had worldwide, signs in the heavens, and then things going on politically and geopolitically. It's been a crazy year, so I wouldn't be surprised
And the next
if
3 months are
something
going to be even
if something
crazier.
surprises us. Yeah,
Because there's an opening, a vulnerable opening where the United States isn't going to do anything and can't. Because if something happened this week or next week, Biden doesn't have the popular, he's a lame duck president. He wouldn't have the popular support to really do anything because the United States doesn't see him as like an acting president, especially if someone was elected between now and then. We wouldn't, that next person wouldn't be able to really respond militarily because we would say, well, there's a president elect in place. So does that make sense? We've got a 3 4
mhm,
month period of time where anyone wants to make a move on the global stage, like Putin. This is your moment. This could be the last moment, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't
so
be surprised.
I would maybe you'll see more of me and Jared talking about news.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap it up here. We've been doing this for about 45 minutes, a little
Wow.
over. So thank you, Rachel, as
Yeah,
always. If you
thanks.
guys haven't subscribed, her channel is called Women in Priesthood. The link is in the description box below. Um, you can also find her in my featured channels list. And then, like I said, I'm doing Artsa. I got the most recent Artsa box. Let me just do another quick thing for Artsa. They send these out every quarter, and it's like a box of just surprise gifts. Like sometimes it's little crafts or little things like this, Qumran inkwell. They also send like little food items, red lentil mix, and this is all from Israel. So that's why you would want to buy this. It's just kind of fun to get stuff directly from Israel. They send stuff for kids as well. I'm actually really excited about this one. It's a little Ark of the Covenant. It has like the Ten Commandments in there, the two tablets, but it's just like a little wood thing that your kids can put together. My girls always get excited about it. And what do you say, honey?
Sometimes face washes and lotions and face masks.
Yeah, sometimes yeah, beauty products and stuff like that. So you can get 25% off. Go to the description box and you'll see a link for Artsa. And the one that's coming up is going to be the Christmas box. And I'm always excited about that one because, in fact, let me pull it out really quick. Do you know where the ornaments are? Sorry, give me just 1 second, you guys. Sorry, I'm so organized. Well, whatever. This isn't necessarily a Christmas thing, but they'll send you like olive wood, stuff like this. And I have 2 olive wood ornaments that have the nativity scene, and the Star of David is one of them with like the nativity scene inside of it. So order Artsa if you can. It's really fun. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.